Okay. Well, welcome to the our little talk and a little discussion about Ifa, a religion from the southwestern area, part of Nigeria. And it is called Ifa, I-F-A, with an accent on A because it means it's a high tone. And this, as I put in my blurb about this talk, is a religion from the Yoruba tribe, and it is guessed and debated that probably they moved into that area about 5,000 years ago. My master, who I will mention later in this program, believes that they actually moved in from the southern part of Egypt, or even the northern part of Egypt, and that there is influence from the religion of Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti. So if you like that material, you might want to do some research. One of the reasons, you can see in my blurb that I was trained in a number of different spiritualities and so on and so forth. And there's kind of a story, and I'll have to be short about it, but there's this kind of a story, personal story about the fact that this is kind of my last one. Please come in. And I was born and raised in Brazil, a country that is kind of blocked from the news here, and you only get misinformation or everything they publish is wrong or whatever it is. So don't rely on a lot of information that you might find in Brazil here because it's probably all wrong. But anyway, there is a religion, there are a number of religions. They're called Candomblé and Umbanda, and with an overall name Macumba, which I don't believe even come from the Yoruba language, must have come from a language next door, or maybe they do, just an older word. But anyway, so I was raised with that religion next door. Brazil is almost like Japan. There are two religions going on. Supposedly Catholicism, which has fallen quite a bit and has been overrun by American-inspired evangelists. And then Afro-Brazilian religions of different types. These two main ones are Macumba, Umbanda, which has a lot of French Spiritism, some Native American, and then Candomblé, which is more like Ifa, from originally Africa. But anyway, the religion Ifa was carried from Africa with the slaves who were picked up and brought to Brazil, thousands and thousands of them, and then to Cuba, where most of the slaves were originally from that area and spoke Yoruba, even though there were some Hausa and some Igbo with them, which is kind of somewhat neighboring areas in Nigeria. And the important thing about this, anyway, is that the original Ifa was changed because obviously in the United States, I have not been able to find out what exactly happened to Ifa here. I don't know if the slaves even tried to do any of it here. I imagine it would have been very, very difficult since everything was suppressed and their families broken up. But in Brazil, they were able to keep it in one very smart way that they were able to keep it is they developed something called syncretism, where they would borrow some kind of saint that had similar qualities to the orishas in the native religion and just prayed in front of them or acted as if they were praying to those saints. Some of the saints, by the way, even though I was brought up in mild Brazilian Catholicism, I do not even recognize they were really unusual. But anyway, so they kept that, and the same thing in Cuba, and the same thing, in Haiti and other countries. Now, there is one very important concept that comes from Ifa that I think most Americans have heard about, and that is the idea of orisha. An orisha is a nature spirit that encompasses qualities that you might want to get. And so I'll be talking about orishas all the time. You may want to look this up because the concept is endless. So this, by the way, this religion is extremely complex and extremely profound. So, but orisha is O-R-I-S-H-A-S. I mean, in the singular would be just orisha, of course. If it's spelled in Portuguese, it has an X instead of an SH. And then same spelling in Spanish also. They might be spelled CH, since Spanish doesn't have sh, so it might be ORICHA. So don't be surprised if you find it under that spelling. But anyway, they're nature spirits, and I'll give an example using my own. And by the way, I'm making all of this very short because we could sit here and talk about Ifa for hours and hours and hours, but we only have an hour. So my particular Orisha that I felt I was associated with is Shango. And you probably remember there was a musical group in Minneapolis called Shangoya. And that's exactly the same Shango, by the way. Obviously, I think the person who was the leader of the band was identified, and I think there's actually a religion on that island, I think Trinidad, Tobago, called Shango, which is only one Orisha. And that's the Orisha that has adopted me. One of the reasons, you may ask, do I choose the Orishas or did the Orishas choose me? It's like in Native American religion. The animals choose you, you don't choose them. So the Orishas choose you, and it's usually because of a quality that you lack, that you don't have. So, courage or sensuality or whatever, and then the Orishas will adopt you. But I'm just reminded of one thing. I forgot to sing a couple songs. I should sing at least, a little bit of songs to the first Orisha, who is Eshu, and also called Ilegua. He has other names, and there are many types of Ileguas also, or Eshus. And then a song to the Orisha who chose me, Shango, and then I have a couple of other Orishas that also work with me, and they are Yemaya, or in Portuguese, Yemanja. Also Yemoja would be another name. In Spanish, Yemaya. And there's a third one, Obatala, who is different qualities, is the Orisha of wisdom and mildness and so on. But anyway, I should sing a couple songs so that the songs are in Yoruba, and forgive my horrible pronunciation. It's a tonal language, very complex, and I am not very good at it, but at least I'm trying. So I'll sing, as in Hinduism, nothing starts without a reference to Ganesh. In this religion, Ifa, nothing starts without a reference to Ilegua or Eshu. By the way, unfortunately, just a little note here. In Brazil, the Catholic Church was so, how can I say, slow, mentally slow, that they somehow identified Eshu with the devil, which is completely wrong. Eshu is just a messenger god. I'm sorry, not just. Is that the Porto god? You have to go through Eshu for everything. There's nothing devilish about Eshu other than the fact that he plays tricks. And by the way, Ifa does not have a devil. So obviously that doesn't fit the religion. So anyway, let me sing a couple of songs. The first one is to Eshu. By the way, my particular Eshu is called Eju Jaba, which is the turtle Eshu. And I think the reason I have the turtle Eshu is that I need courage. Okay, so a song to him. Or her, because he could be a female also. Alaroye yokode, iba wana yokode, iba orisha mao. Alaroye yokode, alaroye yokode, igualo wana yokode. Iba orisha mao, alaroye yokode. So there's a song to Eshu or Ilegua. So I have honored, I have opened the door, I have allowed things to start. Nothing starts without Ilegua or Eshu. And now I'll sing a song to the Orisha who chose me, Shango. Obalube, obalube, obae, obalube, Obalube, obae, obae, oba yana yana, obae, oba yana yana. Obalube, obalube, obae, obalube, obalube, obae, obae, oba yana yana, obae, oba yana yana. So that's a song to Shango. And then I guess I will not go through the 4 songs. I'll probably stop here because there'll be other things to talk about. But at least I sang to my main Orisha. So, by the way, I should mention some basic things about Ifa. Another basic thing, I mentioned that it's a 5,000-year-old or perhaps even older religion from spirituality from Western Nigeria. By the way, Ifa does not have a devil, so you don't have to worry about that. And one of the things that I really love about Ifa is this. Ifa is very realistic. It's very practical. So in other words, if you choose to spend your life making money, and that's what you want to focus on, and building property and so on, you can, as long as you follow your Orisha and the precept of good character. If you want to spend your life being, sensuous and whatever, you can. By the way, sex in Ifa is not a sin. I find that very attractive because I always wondered, why would God invent sexuality and then turn around and say, oh, that's not good for you? That sounded very somehow illogical. So Ifa does not have a problem with that. If you're into sexuality, you can choose Shango's sexuality, which is, somewhat more overt, or you can choose, a very mild and kind and motherly sexuality, which is Iemanjaz or Yemojaz, or you can choose a very, impetuous sexuality as the one in Oya. So you have a choice. So I like that. And the Ifa basically believes this. The purpose of life is to develop good character. And that's called Iwapele, good character. And the other purpose is to be successful. Whether it's successful in your spiritual quest, and if you want to spend your life giving money to the poor, that's wonderful. And Ifa has this idea that I find absolutely attractive. You are not helpless. In fact, it is your responsibility to take care of your life along with, the help from the Orishas and from Creator. So you are responsible for developing that good character. You're not, there are things you can do. One of the things Ifa uses for you to develop that is divination. You can go see, a qualified reader, and that person can say, you need to do this, you need to make this change, that change. According to Ifa, there are only 2 things you can change in your life. One is when you're born. Second is when you die. And even that is kind of questionable, because you could play a little bit with that one. Otherwise, you can change everything. So when they do divination, it's not, this is going to happen. It's written that you're going to get sick here. There's none of that. So when you do divination, it tells you exactly what you need to do, what your problems are. And by the way, you have to be absolutely true to yourself. In other words, if you lie to yourself, you're under some dogma or something, it's not going to work. Because you have to face the truth. You made a mistake, you said the wrong thing, you did the wrong thing. If you can't face that, your divination is not going to help you, okay? But anyway, that's what it's meant for. There's another thing that should be clarified about Ifa that's very basic. It is not a black religion, quote unquote. So in other words, Ifa was by the Creator. The Creator didn't just create this little tribe here, in this one tiny little insignificant planet, so that it would be the god of that planet and that tribe only. That's obviously absurd. Even, the masters in Ifa and the Ifa scriptures talk about creating everyone. So, black just happens to be one type of creation. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this that, so in other words, it's not a black religion. It's something that originates in Africa, but you can be yellow, white, whatever it is that you want to be, and enjoying that spirituality. And I will use the country where I was born as that. In Brazil, Whether the Babalao is white, black, blue, blonde, makes no difference. Nobody's surprised. Everybody's, it's the most mixed country in the world. So everybody, 80% of the people have some kind of dark gene, darker color gene, but not necessarily. It could be a blonde Babalao or something like that. And it doesn't surprise anyone if it's half darker people and half lighter people and all kinds, anything in between. So it's not even an issue. So that's one thing. And does it fit the original land of the Yorubas and so on? Of course. But you know what? A lot of the issues that we deal with are planetary issues and so on. And by the way, the Yorubas are extremely, or this particular spirituality is extremely aware of extraterrestrials. They are aware of the technology to lift, 10,000-ton stones and things like that. They were aware of that even when they were brought here. Unfortunately, it seems that the slaves here weren't able to put that into practice because they could have defeated the white slave owners. But they were aware of that. There's more than enough evidence that they were able to move 10,000-ton stones with no machinery and things like that. So anyway, and I talked about my own life. And it's kind of interesting that I was afraid to join this spirituality because I grew up in Brazil, and unfortunately this kind of spirituality, when it came to the Americas, Cuba, Brazil, and some of the other countries, it took on some negative ideas from Catholicism, like the devil, which is not a concept Ifa has. But, even Umbanda in Brazil actually, not Umbanda, but Macumba in Brazil has a devil figure, which makes no sense, since this religion has no devil. So, and also, by the way, it's recognized that you can do bad. You can do, how can I say, incantations to bring evil to other people. And I had two sisters who were brought up, were trained in that religion for 7 years, so they know the ins and outs of it, which I do not. I left Brazil a little too early to go through that. And they know that it's very powerful, and therefore you have to be very careful with it. If you want to do evil, you can. But remember, it will come back to get you. Yeah? By the way, Ifa does not promote evil in any way, shape, or form. It is extremely, how can I say, positive. Negativity is not suggested in any way, at least in the original form. So anyway, I had some fear about joining this. I did join it. It is difficult to find a teacher because one of the things that I found out when I tried to join, I thought about joining maybe the Hispanic ones, the Santeria people, or maybe the Cuban ones, the Lucumi people, or maybe I could even find a Brazilian practitioner here, and I didn't. I need to warn you about one thing. When you're looking for a teacher for this religion, if you're interested in it, be very cautious. There are scammers involved in it. Because people can make enormous amounts of money doing divinations for this, and can pray, can take advantage of people's superstitions and so on and so forth. There are a lot of people making a big buck out there because of this. So be careful. Ask your heart. When you try to find a Ifa master, ask your heart, is this person real? Is this person spiritual? If they only ask you questions about how much money you can give and how many thousands of dollars you're willing to spend, that's obviously not where you want to go, right? And I had an experience like that, by the way. I did get in touch with somebody who had almost no integrity whatsoever. And in the end, basically had 6 people call me and say, well, do you want to do this for $23,000? And I said, no, I don't see any spirituality here. You guys act like insurance agents. So obviously I didn't go with that. I did find one teacher. And if you want to contact him, fine. By the way, there are other good teachers out there also who are along the same line. So I have an email here. It's falokunfatumbi@hotmail.com. By the way, don't be surprised, he's white. He was actually trained in Nigeria, 20 or 30 years ago. Was acknowledged in Ile-Ife, which is like the capital of Ifa. And he also has a Facebook site called Egbe Iwapele Family. Egbe means group, Iwapele is good character, and the family of good character. I will spell it for you. Egbeiwapele, family. It's on Facebook. If you want to go there, go ahead. Yeah? So I repeat, Egbe, Egbeiwapele, family. And by the way, on that page, when you get, you will also find, in your Google, you will find other people who are probably good people also. So this is just my master, okay, my teacher. And by the way, he doesn't even call himself master because he's very humble and just basically considers himself a student just like everybody else. Even though this guy was recognized by 32 babalaos in Ile-Ife, which is like the capital of Ifa. Well, to me, that's more than enough qualification. By the way, he doesn't have any degrees in African studies or anything like that, so academia, even though he's written 24 books, academia totally ignores him. Anyway, so the positive thing, I already mentioned, the different types that, I should mention this, that in Nigeria, this religion in its original form, Ifa, is under extreme danger. It's persecuted by Christians who see it as competition, persecuted by Muslims who also see it as competition. So they're disappearing. There are even laws, I haven't been to Nigeria, but I heard there's even a law that says that you could torture an Ifa priest because of whatever. So it seems that the country that really is guarding all this right now is Brazil. And by the way, since you guys are not allowed to hear anything about Brazil and everything that comes here is wrong or has some horrible mistake in it, don't trust what you see on the internet or in Google or on TV because it's probably wrong. I was looking up, for example, how many people in Brazil practice Afro-Brazilian religion. And Google said 1%. Excuse me? I mean, it's like saying that 1% of the Japanese practice Buddhism. I mean, that is absolutely absurd. So obviously, I don't know, it's my personal belief that there's some kind of presidential decree or something against giving you information about Brazil, because it's either ignored or it's wrong. So, and I've seen this for like 30 years. So I don't know what the problem is there. But anyway, be careful with information you get. But anyway, they're now like the fortress of Ifa, because not only does the Brazilian government not persecute these religions, but it actually protects them as a national endowment, as a national gift, as a national cultural item. So they're actually protected. Okay. So, by the way, when somebody seeks divination from an Ifa person, and by the way, I do offer divination in case you're interested. I have a site called Rubem, Lima, Psychic Reader and Shamanic Healer. I do offer simple Ifa divination with 4 cowries, but it's not the really advanced one. I haven't got there yet. There is something called Merindinlogun, which is very complicated. It deals with the 256 verses of Ifa scripture, which is an enormous corpus, and I'm nowhere near that kind of level. I just do 4 cowrie divinations. So if you're interested in that, I'm also a psychic reader, so I've been doing readings for years and years and years. Okay. One of the things that they mention is this, that when people go to Ifa for divination, very often it's not what brought them to the Babalao or what brought them to the reader is not exactly the cause of the problem. Sometimes they have some physical problem because of something else, because there's something wrong in the family, for example. The example they gave was this. Somebody went to a reader because they were having problems with their business. And then the reader, threw the cowries and so on. And by the way, I will show you some cowries here. So I do divination with 4 of these. Okay, and they have a female side and a male side. You can also do divination with this device here that's actually with coconut pieces. So anyway, and then there is also something, and I do have an example here, that are bitter nut colas that the more advanced people use for divination. And I hope I have one here. I'll put it there on the mat for you to see. When I get advanced, I will be hopefully doing divinations with those. Let me see if I find them. Okay. So this is a bitter kola nut, and they're called ikin. And if you're advanced enough, you can do divinations with those. By the way, I've been initiated into Ifa. So in my teacher believes that that's enough, that that's all you need. A lot of the people here, especially those who do Lukumi and Santeria and in Umbanda and Macumba, but there's several varieties of this in Brazil, by the way, believe that you have to be a babalao in order to do that. And my teacher believes that there's no babalao. The only babalao was Orumila, who was one of the original communicators of creation. So that's his view of it. So in fact, being an awo, in other words, an apprentice is enough. Being a student of it is enough. An initiated person. Okay. So anyway, I told you that sometimes people go to get divination, get a reading, and what they came with, this person came thinking that his business was a problem. And then they found out that it was, after they did the cowries or the ikin, it wasn't the business, it was his family relations that were just falling apart, and it affected everything he did at work. So that's why the business was going downhill. So that could happen. In other words, you have to be totally honest with yourself and be able to accept what comes out in that reading. Okay. There are a couple of things that I will mention about Ifa that might be a little bit on the, how can I say, controversial side, but I'll just mention that. There's this discussion of, there's something called ebo, which are, offerings. There's adimu, you offer food to the ancestors. So one of the things that I had difficulty with was this. This religion has something called ancestor worship. So Ifa basically believes that everybody's in a lineage, that spirits will be recycled and come back. In other words, if you're born into a family in wherever, you are probably your grandfather, your great-grandfather, or one of your ancestors who came back. Okay? So they do believe in rebirth, but the rebirth is along the same line, and that may be a little difficult for us to accept, that everybody would be along the same family. Okay? So that spirits are recycled. And so to me, that's a little challenging because I believe in rebirth in any form, but Ifa believes that it's the same lineage, the same family. So I don't do with myself because I don't know what to do with myself because I'm a mutt. I'm a mixture of Celtic with Native American, and I don't know what else. So, okay, now, so that's ancestor worship, something that I had started to do. And when I first started practicing Ifa, I remember that the very first time I sat down for an ancestor meditation, I was very defensive about it. I thought, what am I doing this for? I don't want to pray to my mother and my father and my aunts or my grandparents and so on, but I did it anyway. And one of the things that happened that got me hooked is pretty much in the middle of that meditation, while I was sitting there with my altar and everything. By the way, there's a book here by my master who tells you how to set up an altar for ancestor worship. And I'm sure there are other authors too. There is somebody different here, by the way, this Philip Neymark, which is another author too. He will probably, have books that instruct you on how to prepare an ancestor altar. But anyway, I was sitting there and thinking, why am I doing this? And then in the middle of the I'm sorry, it's just in the middle of the session, this happened. I tried to get up, and I stepped on something, and I couldn't figure out, I don't know if I have it on anymore. Okay, maybe I don't. But I stepped on something, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And for some reason, I have been focusing on hearts. And when I stepped on something, I looked at it, and it was a heart-shaped citrine. And I was sitting there thinking, what in the world is a heart-shaped citrine doing under my feet? So after that, I became a believer. Obviously, there must be something to that, because I have no explanation for any of that. And now I don't even know where it is, but anyway, I brought it here to show you, and I misplaced it. But anyway, it's somewhere. And so after that, I've never had stones materialize out of nowhere. So after that, I say, okay, maybe I better pay attention to this. All right. But anyway, I was going to mention something slightly controversial about it, which is this. Sometimes the babalaos, the priests will assign, if you have something really major, like, for example, you can't bear children and you would like to have children. You have some serious disease. Sometimes they will assign you something, for example, tell you to kill a goat or a chicken or whatever it is. By the way, I found the citrine. It was right on me. So here it is. It's almost heart-shaped. And all of a sudden, it materialized under my feet. So believe me, a spirituality that can materialize something that I was thinking will get my attention. But anyway, so, and you might think, well, isn't that horrible that they're killing animals and so on? Well, think about it. It's just a question of viewpoint. First of all, Ifa or even Lukumi or even the American varieties, the South American varieties of this religion do not do sacrifice unless it's something really major, like a major disease or, being barren or something like that. And think about it. Every day, all these cows go through a line. They're killed for nothing. They're cut apart. There's no ritual involved. In this one, I hope you understand my thinking here. The animals are treated with the greatest kindness possible. The animals understand that they're sacrificing themselves for a purpose. Then they're treated as kindly as possible. Yes, they do get blood from the animal and the animal dies. But then they use the animal to feed the people. In other words, it's not a stupid, meaningless killing of an animal or sacrificing of an animal. There is no bloodletting ritual or anything like that. The animal is killed in high ceremonial conditions, and then the meat is shared with the whole people, with a whole group of people who came for the ceremony. Well, if we can kill cows automatically in some machine somewhere, what's the problem, right? So that's my point. Anyway, all right, so moving on. And by the way, I already said those are very rare. You only do those things in special situations. By the way, it is normal if you have an ancestor altar that you offer food. You put food on that altar every day in Nigeria. Here in the diaspora, they don't necessarily do that every day, but I do it every week. I offer some kind of food and a cup of coffee and so on to the ancestors. And it's not that the ancestors are going to eat that. It's an act of offering something, and that's a spiritual offering. They're obviously not going to drink that, or maybe they do. But they will drink the essence of it. But they don't need that to live, obviously, or to continue in Olorum, which is spirit, in heaven. It's just a gesture of offering something when you're asking for something. Okay. There was, also one thing that I forgot to mention is this. In Ifa, the story of creation of the universe is extremely complex. People, it might look a little unusual, but everything has a spiritual and as well as a scientific explanation. So don't take it literally, of course. The idea is that, Orumila came down and, this chicken threw sand around and things like that. But each and every one of these things has a spiritual and scientific explanation. So be aware of that. By the way, it has a trinity. So in other words, Olorum is the supreme God, supreme creation, but Olorum is so far away that, if you are familiar with Hinduism, it's the same idea as Vishnu. Vishnu is not in touch with us. Vishnu is way far, in some other dimension. And so is Olorum. And then there is a God who did create, who is responsible for creation. That's Olodumare. And Olodumare had a number of helpers. And there are names for those, and I won't try to repeat them here because I might make a mistake or mispronounce. But anyway, there are creator spirits. So there is Olodumare after Olorum. And then there is a Holy Spirit, a spirit that communicates with us, that translates things so that we can understand. And that spirit is called Orumila, Orula, if you're a Hispanic person, and Orula, and also Ela, which is more like the Holy Spirit, to make things understandable and communicates with us directly. Okay, so there is a Trinity also, a God in one type of thing. There's another point, too, that's not even on my list here, but I'd like to mention to you. In Ifa, at least the way the religion, in the scripture and so on, females in many ways are either equal or superior to male. Because the Council of Women, of Mothers, in Nigeria is the one that determines whether a king is going to be accepted or not. So they have to approve it first. It means then that women actually have power over that. It would be very difficult for this religion to become, progesterone-oriented like, some other spiritualities, because everything is based on women first. So the fact that the women had to approve everything in this religion created a lot of problems for the British, who landed in Nigeria and said, oh, this belongs to us, all of a sudden, and of course stole as much as they possibly could. So here you think about the colonialist idea is this. When the British got to Nigeria and realized that it was this religion where the women was the most important thing, and the women were very aware of the community, by the way. They knew what the community needed. They knew what they had. They knew there was oil. They knew there were metals. They knew all this. The British had to, first of all, use their racism in order to, first of all, justify the reason they're taking over a country that's not theirs. Why would they all of a sudden land in Nigeria and say, oh, this belongs to Britain? So the way they did that, and they did that with a lot, with India. I mean, they even did that with Ireland, even though they're not, don't have black skin. But to justify their stealing everything and bleeding the countries, like Ireland and India and Africa and so on, by simply creating this idea that anybody who was colored was either inferior or subhuman. Was either an inferior human, not fully human, or subhuman. So they did that with India, so they could again justify their, ripping the country off completely, and they didn't even have the ability to print their, to do their own textiles, which they were very good at. They even used that with the Irish, even though the Irish are not black. So when you try to you're Christian, quote unquote, and you try to justify stealing a country's resources, you invent this idea that, well, these are not people. These are subhumans, they're inhuman. It doesn't matter. We can take over the whole country. And then they'll be educated and they'll have culture, whatever. So that's the excuse, right? So just think about that. So they really hated these women. I think they're called Oyamni, these councils, because they knew what was going on, and they knew the British were there to steal everything they could. So they use their Christian, quote unquote, ideas that, that these were witches, that somehow they were evil, whatever. So obviously they can always explain away, for whatever women's doing something against the fact that you're stealing the resources of the country, you call them witches, okay? So be aware of that. That happened in a lot of countries. So anyway, but one point that I thought is very interesting is this spirituality is very respectful of women, is very much based on women. Women can be queens. Women have to decide whether the yoga is approved or not. But by the way, they also have a lot of respect for elders, which shouldn't surprise you because the Native Americans do the same thing, right? That an elder, even the way they greet an elder in the street, the kids will pretty much kneel down because there's an elder. So I thought you might want to know that quality of the religion. Now, another thing, I told you that in my own story, one of the reasons I decided to study this religion formally is that I had been born in Brazil. The religion was there next door. The joke is that Brazilian Catholics are actually Trinitarians. They go to church 3 times in a lifetime, and then during the week they make sure they go to the Umbanda and the Candomblé and whatever it is that they go to. But that's actually not correct. There are serious Catholics in Brazil also. But anyway, so I joined it, in spite of all that fear, I decided to join it because I did not want to die not knowing and really knowing a lot more about the religion that I grew up with. It was right next door. It would be like a Japanese person realizing, oh, wait a minute, I was born in Japan, but I don't know anything about Shintoism or Buddhism. So I finally decided to join it with fear. And I have to admit one thing, this is a confession. Even though half of my family is black, because everything in Brazil is like that, all kinds of colors in the same family, or more than half of my family, I still thought, and especially living in the United States, in Brazil, you're Brazilian first and then you're black. But here, it seems like people are separate. So I thought, I really want to know how people of dark skin, black color, or no matter how black they are, how they feel. And I want to be able to look at them and see if I can get a little more insight as to how they live and how they feel. So that's one of the reasons I decided to join this. Not the only reason, but one of them. And so that's part of the thing. And I still see that I was subject to stereotypes and whatever, and think, this person looks different. Therefore, I am afraid. Well, why? They look different, so what? They're black, or they're darker, or whatever. They're not, or they have a different a different physical look than what what the majority, the white people, look like. Well, I want to know what they're doing, and I want to know how they feel. So I thought that it would be a good way of becoming less ignorant and getting rid of more stereotypes, if I can. So anyway, that was part of the reason. But the main one was this. I did not want to die without knowing more about the religion that was there, when I was growing up. Okay. I think that's enough for a general idea. If there's anybody here who would like to know who your Orisha is, you can come up and I will use the pendulum to determine that. And I will not name 244 Orishas. I'll just name about 15 and see if you belong to one of them. And then if there are any other questions, because we do have at least 15 minutes for questions. So I hope I didn't ramble on and on, but I'm open for questions. When I do healings, I use that. Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, and we need to repeat the question. So Memo, my friend here, Memo, was asking, when you do healings, do people just pray? Do you use incense? So how do you do it? Okay, so that was Memo's question then. How do you do healings? What I have been doing is I use this instrument here whose name I forgot, but it's for calling spirits. And I will ring it for you so you know what it sounds like. this is, it's kind of what you use to call the Orishas to possess you. So I use that, and by the way, that's my own invention. I think that in Ifa is very flexible. There isn't one right way of doing something. Even though, you try very carefully not to go against a major tradition. But, there are different people who like to do it this way and people who like to do it that way. What I do then is use that instrument to call Ela, Holy Spirit, to call the Orishas who work with me, who are Shango, Yemoja, and Obatala, and also to see if my client, the person who's receiving the healing, is also possessed, if the spirit will enter into that person. So that's what I use. There may be other ways of doing healings, but I especially invoke my Orishas and Ela, Holy Spirit, which is another form of Orumila. Okay? Did I answer your question, Memo? Okay. Any other question, comment, whatever? No. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything about. The question is this: am I looking for evil spirits when I'm doing a reading? No, I'm not. If I'm doing a read, by the way, I didn't mention evil spirits. So I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. Remember, Ifa has no devil. Now, are there negative spirits? Are there negative ancestors? Yes, there are. But when I do a healing, I personally don't think about evil spirits. I think about asking the Orishas, Shango, in my case, Yemanja, Obatala, and also the Holy Spirit, Ela, to come and heal that person. By the way, are there evil spirits out there? Yes, of course. For example, one of the things I do in my ancestor worship is this. I do not call I name, when you do ancestor worship, you name everybody who you want to call to be present at the ancestor meditation. I do not call my maternal grandfather and grandmother. You have a choice not to call certain people. For example, because I feel that they were, how can I say, anti-women. I did not like their language about women, even though they were kind to me. And so I choose not to call them. Not that they were evil, they just were not the highest spirit. So one of the choices in Baba, in this book here called Awo, talks about that. You have the choice of not, if you had somebody in the family who was a drug addict, who had problems with drinking or something like that, you have a choice not to call them. Now, do you need to forgive them? Yes, because remember, they passed, right? And they were looking for love just like you were. And if you didn't get love for them because they were drunk or whatever, you need to forgive them too. And remember, you were looking for love. They need that you wanted to love them, that you loved them when they were there, even though they were drunk. And also, you want to move on. You don't want this thing, sticking in your life, okay? So you want to forgive that person, even if it was your father or your whoever, somebody very close. Forgive that person, but you don't have to call them to your ancestor worship. Forgive that person, be done with them. Remember too that now that they are in Orun, if they're in heaven, they're different. They're not the same spirit, right? They're back to their essence. So there's no reason to get stuck on that. Yeah, but no, I do not sit around worrying about evil spirits. Now, do evil spirits, for example, can you use some rituals and so on for negativity? Yes, you can. I don't go there. I have never tried to do any sort of black magic or anything like that. There are, you have heard about, people in some areas of the world, anywhere, that could do that and do, little dolls and stick pins in them or whatever. I have no desire to do that, and, that's not what this is about. Ifa is about good character, building good character and having a happy and successful life. By the way, Ifa is about feeling good. So you go to go for divination because you want to feel good, because you want to be healed, because you want to know what's blocking you. Remember that Ifa thinks that you're completely and totally responsible for your life and for asking for help. If you're stuck, do something. Don't sit there, complaining. Or come up with some dogma as an excuse, right? So anyway, did I answer your question? Good. Anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, that's just my pendulum. If anybody wants to know who their orishas are. Do you guys want to know who your orishas are? Okay, you would like. Okay. And by the way, you don't have to, I'm just asking. Oh, this thing fell. Okay. Thank you, I will use the pendulum. And I'm not going to go through 244 orishas. I will just ask, the most obvious ones. And then if we have extra time, I might talk about a little bit about what the qualities of some of the orishas are. So I'm simply going to ask, are you a Shango? A son of Shango? Omo Shango? No. Ogun. I'm getting yes for Ogun. See if there's anybody else. Oshun. Not very likely. Yemaya. Obatala. Seems like you have two. Okay. Osanin. Oshosi. Okay. Oya. Okay, so I'm going to go back to, it seems like you have two. So Obatala and Ogun. I'm being told that Obatala is first. So let's try that again. Is he a son of Obatala? Yes, so that's one of your orishas. And we also heard a little Ogun there. Congratulations. Ogun is like number 2, but Ogun is also there. So that's it. You passed on that one, right? Or would you like to know your orisha? You don't want to know. Okay, no problem. So, and then perhaps since we have about 5 minutes left, I'd like to just mention some of the orishas. Okay. So I hope I have answered all your questions and have been clear about it. Yeah. Brazil. Yeah. Oh yeah, I talk to them pretty much every day because we have a family texting line. So every day, not only are they in touch with me, or text every day, but call them on the weekend also. My daughter is involved in that also. So we have this family line that includes just about everybody. One of the interesting things about being in a Brazilian family is this, and I think Americans sometimes don't perceive that. One of the reasons Brazil does so well with race is this: everybody. So in other words, in a country where 80% of over 80% of the people have some kind of black blood, it is very difficult to be racist. Because you could be racist about your, in my case, my niece, my nephew, my sister, my 2 sisters, Plus I have another sister who's much whiter and I don't know why. It's very difficult to be racist. And you have, black people who are mixed in with blonde people, so black people with blue eyes and things like that. I mean, you can imagine it, Brazil has it, okay? So obviously, practically, it would be very difficult to be racist. The other thing, too, I don't know if you read about this, but the Catholics, even though they, were ignorant and misread and misunderstood the native religions, they did have one good thing. The fact that they never had this English idea that if you were black or colored, you were inferior and subhuman. Either, subhuman or inhuman. They had the idea that you're black, you're black. And if you're converted and you become a Christian, that's fine. You're just like everybody else. And by the way, this even happened in the United States, in Florida and Georgia. The Spaniards, they don't care if you're a black, you're a merchant, whatever. It's just when the Anglos came that, they had to flee. So that helped. Another thing that helps with that is Portugal itself was a very mixed country. For example, I discovered that I have a lot of Celtic blood. Now, you might think, well, why would somebody from Brazil have Celtic blood? Oh, that's very easy. Northern Portugal was a very Celtic territory. In fact, their ruins are about as fine as the ones they have in Ireland. There was a group called Celtiberian. In other words, Iberian Celts. And have their blood. A lot of it. So that's it. That explains the whole thing. And I may even have, because of that, I may have some, I also have some Semitic blood, which makes sense. Because what's the name of that group that was very early in the Mediterranean? But anyway, they were Semites. And they went all over the islands, and they went to the Azores and all that. So it would make sense that I have Semitic blood. So people forget that. Portugal is already very mixed. There were very dark Portuguese. And by the way, it also makes sense for Egypt. People forget that in Egypt, there are, the people in the south are very dark. Pretty much black. So, black Egyptians, big deal, So when you come from a mixed tradition like that, well, then they still the Portuguese obviously still made mistakes and did horrible things and all that, but at least they didn't have this idea that, oh, gee, you're inferior because you're dark. And even there, they may have been, sometimes there may even be some color prejudice, but not racial prejudice. One thing you notice in Brazil, people don't really know what race is until recently. They started imitating the US. But they didn't know what that was. What is race supposed to be? I know about color, but I don't know what race is. So they had to look it up and, and find out from the Americans what race was. So there you go. And by the way, I'm not saying that country is perfect that way. There are still dumb things going around, but at least I never heard a Brazilian say, oh, I don't like you because your race is different. I've never heard that. I may have heard somebody in the interior who are uneducated saying, I don't like you because I don't like your color. That's possible. Not very probable, especially these days, but possible. But there wasn't a racial basis to it. There was maybe color problem. But you know what? Even that is meaningless because, again, a country where 80% of the people are dark. And which is kind of interesting, this goes again about the fact that you guys don't get any information about Brazil. So there was a president that made a comment about, oh, I'm going to visit Argentina, and those guys are, our allies and so on. And that was a horrendous diplomatic mistake. Because for one thing, the only country that sided with the United States in both wars was Brazil. And Brazil has a whole building full of trophies that they got from the Germans. And American generals go there every year to be part of the celebrities. So, by the way, this is never mentioned in the American press, by the way. But they go there, to congratulate, thank Brazil for participating in the Second World War. And they sent a whole army to Europe and all that stuff. But where was I going with this? So I'm sorry, I forgot what my point was in this whole thing. But the idea is the information isn't there, right? Oh, and I know what it is. And the president said, okay, so it was a horrendous diplomatic mistake because for one thing, Chile got very nervous because Argentina and Chile weren't getting along. The countries that have minorities were very nervous because Argentina is 97% white. And they're thinking, oh my God, are they supporting these guys? And Argentina had actually printed stuff like this. We're a very successful country because we have no minorities. Oops, excuse me? This in the 20th century? In 1980? So it was like, oh my gosh, how can you say that? You should have done your homework before you made a statement like that. So they made Brazil nervous, Chile nervous, all the other countries minority nervous. Look it up before you say something like that, right? Remember, countries in South America are very different. You have Argentina and Chile are 97% white. You can hardly see a minority. In Brazil, everybody is mixed in some way. So it's a total opposite. So anyway, that's interesting. Just to, spike your curiosity. I think our time is over. Gary needs to get ready for the 10 o'clock. So if you would like to give a donation, there's a basket out there. I'm going to give mine online. And I hope I helped you get excited about this new 5,000-year-old African spirituality that exists. By the way, it is in grave danger in Nigeria. They're being chased by the Christians and the Muslims. Unfortunately. And so they need support in order to survive. Thank you.